nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you. I've been a fan of yours for a while. I've been watching you. Really?
Plus 2 Wrestling. I love it. I got the notifications dinged, you know? I get to see them all.
Oh, man, you're too kind. Man, I'm glad to finally have you in High Tension Wrestling.
I love being here. I had so much fun. You know what I say? If it ain't fun, Brew doesn't want to do it, right?
Cool.
Right, man?
I hope you come back, man.
I will be back if you have me. Yeah.
Hi, man. It's been nice meeting you.
Yeah, it's nice meeting you.
I don't want to hold you up.
I gotta get back to Margaritaville, but my tab's open, so put one on before you go, buddy. You know what I'm saying? Right?
Sure thing, man. Sure thing, man.
5 o'clock somewhere, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
All right, I'll see you, man.
I'll see you later, Scott.
Oh, dude, you forgot something.
I gotta run, Scott.
No. No! No! I hate the spoiler. Let's plug in. This very Saturday, it is the 21st Tournament of Death, the largest death match tournament on the East Coast. So be sure to join us at the Ultra Violent Underground. That's 179 Ebenezer Church Road in Townsend, Delaware. There you will see in the first round, Big Effin' Joe takes on Danny Darko in a skinny light tubes match. I begged them. I told them, please do not use skinny light tubes. They're dangerous and you shouldn't be using them. And the response I got was they're English and this is how they do it. So the Brits are going to show the Americans how to do death in a skinny light tubes match. Plus, see Joel Bateman take on Judge Joe Dredd in a raining blood death match. It's going to be sharp, it's going to be painful, and the blood will flow. Also, in a road rage death match, yes, we are promising car violence. Mickey Knuckles, the death match godmother, goes one-on-one with J.J. Allen. And finally, the death match legend, Madman Pondo, goes one-on-one with newcomer Tarzan Duran. And that's just the first round. The second round will all be fans bring the weapons. So please bring any creative implements that you'd like to see these competitors whack each other with or throw each other through at the Ultra Violent Underground. That's 179 Ebenezer Church Road in Townsend, Delaware. This Saturday, December 21st. The bell rings at 2 p.m. and you don't want to miss this. So get your tickets now at czwrestling.com. Saturday, October 5th, Cosplay Pro Wrestling returns to FanCon. So come out and see your favorite comic book, video game, and anime characters duke it out in the squared circle at FanCon. Cosplay Pro Wrestling starts at 12 p.m., so be sure to be there at 424 South Mainland Road in Vineland, New Jersey. Cosplay Pro Wrestling is always a fun time, so make sure you make your way to Vineland, New Jersey. It's a noon show, which gives you plenty of time after that show to head on up to Quakerstown for CZW Breakout, a spotlight on the up-and-coming stars in independent wrestling. That takes place at Q-Mart. That's 201 Station Road in Quakerstown, New Jersey. You never know who might show up, so be sure to join us in Quakerstown October 5th. I know I'm a little late to the party, but today on the Soapbox, I would like to look back at AEW's All Out, and I want to specifically look at Hangman Adam Page versus Swerve Stickland in a steel cage unsanctioned match. This match has really divided the fan base. Some people think it was the greatest thing they've ever seen. Some people think it was the most disgusting, unnecessary thing they have ever seen. And I wanted to kind of let this breathe a little bit. I wanted to take some time and see how they addressed it on Dynamite. I also spent some time just watching basically anyone talk about this. So I've been watching Vince Russo, Al Snow, Dutch Mantell, Stevie Richards, Alvarez, basically anyone that I can get my hands on and get my ears tuned into. I wanted to get their opinion on this match. And they all have similar opinions and varying opinions on different things, but none of them really touched on my opinion. I mean, you're looking at the guy who, on Saturday, will be calling Tournament of Death. I have a different appreciation of death match wrestling, despite my nice purple shirt and tie. I do see it as an art form that I think is important in the world of professional wrestling. I understand it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I think there's elements of it that I understand, and I'm going to bring a unique view of things. So the way we're going to do this, it's not going to be a rating. I'm not going to give it like star rating. Instead, we are going to analyze every spot. And I'm going to say whether that was a good idea or a bad idea. So let's overanalyze Hangman versus Swerve. Number 1, Willow versus Statlander. So we start well before the match. We have to talk about Willow Nightingale versus Chris Statlander. A lot of people kind of had a complaint that Chris Statlander and Willow were kind of taking away from the main event because they had a Chicago street fight earlier in the show. It's one of those elements of if the big end angle of a match is someone getting thrown through a table, you don't want a bunch of other people getting thrown through tables earlier. And to an extent, I do agree with this and I do see the issue. Now, I think Chris Statlander versus Willow Nightingale was a great match, and I don't want to take anything away from it. But I also think they did go out of their way to make sure their match was different from Hangman and Swerve. They decided, Willow and Statlander, to do a lot of pokey. It's a lot of thumbtacks, it is a lot of light tubes, and it's a lot of barbed wire. A lot of things that hurt because they poke you. Meanwhile, with Swerve and Hangman, it was a lot of blunt. Chairs, tables, cinder blocks. We'll get into it. It was a lot of blunt impacts. So it did have a bit of a different flavor, minus one spot with Swerve at the end that we'll get to. So I think they did a good job of making it feel different. You know, they were confined in a cage, Swerve and Hangman, while Statlander and Willow spilled out all over the arena, kind of giving it a different flavor. The one thing I will say that I think they could have done a better job with is I think the stipulation itself was a bit foolish. They did a big thing at All In where the winner of a big tag team match got to choose the stipulation, and then the stipulation was Chicago street fight. There wasn't anything special about that stipulation. It was just, we're going to have a plunder match, which I find very odd because they tried to tell a story about chains, about how these two were connected to one another, and now the chain has been broken. There's a lot of spots of wrapping chain around their arms and around their fists. There's even a moment where they're each bound by the wrist to a long chain. And the moment that happened, I yelled, that should be the match. This should have just been a chain match. Do I think they should do the turnbuckle gimmick? No. But I think you could have told a better story if Willow, after winning that match and getting to choose the stipulation, got to cut a promo like, we've been going through this together for so long. We've been connected for so long. And you're trying to now rip us apart. So, I'm going to do what I do best, and I'm going to try to maintain that connection. I'm going to make sure that you can't sever that connection, because we're always going to be in this together. There's not going to be any running away from me. Because at All Out, we're going to be chained together. I think that would have told a better story. It would have made it even more different from the main event because it's more about the connection with the chain rather than just plunder spot, plunder spot, plunder spot. Overall, I think the criticism has been understandable but a bit too intense that this match took away from the main event. Number 2, the plastic bag. Yes, we haven't even gotten to the match yet because we also have to talk about the plastic bag. Jon Moxley and the rest of the Blackpool Combat Club, minus Wheeler Yuta, has turned their backs on Bryan Danielson. Not only did they attack him, but they suffocated him with a plastic bag. Something that was vile and disgusting. JR even said this isn't wrestling. Despite this, everyone just keeps talking about how this has happened before and that Terry Funk did it to Ric Flair. That shouldn't have been the takeaway. The takeaway is this is a new level of violence. A couple people were complaining that this isn't what the Blackpool Combat Club were about. They were shooters. It should have been an armbar where he broke his leg. No. That was Danielson. This is Moxley. And Moxley hurts you. I think it's a good spot. I think it's deeply disturbing, and I understand why people don't like it, but that's the reaction you're trying to get. We live in an era of smarks where everyone knows, the insider things. I'm talking about it right now. So to create a moment that makes you actually viscerally dislike what you're seeing, that's real heat. I will say it is damaging to put that right before the main event, because then all the discussion of All Out was, hey, this show had 2 murders back to back. I personally would have liked it if maybe Mox turned on him at All Out and then the rest of them turned on him on Dynamite. But that's an impossibility because you can't do the plastic bag spot on TV. That is a pay-per-view spot. There's no way TBS or TNT are going to let someone get suffocated with a plastic bag. They show American Beauty on that channel. It's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. You can't villainize that. But in all seriousness, it is too extreme of a spot to do on TV, so you had to do it on pay-per-view. Personally, I think maybe you should have had Bryan and Jungle Boy, Jack Perry, go on first. I think if they were first, you could have put a nice gap in between those 2 moments. It is a rough way to start the show, but it would be a memorable way to start the show and not have it so closely juxtaposed to the main event. It might be too harsh and people may tune out. I really like the spot. I think it's an unfortunate placement with what else was on the card. Overall, it's actually not that dangerous of a spot. Don't put a plastic bag over your head. I feel like I don't have to say that. But the way that it was being held, you could easily stick your fingers in your mouth and rip the bag open, which you might have noticed is what happened. I think it was a controlled situation that looked very scary. So I have no criticism for it being done. I think it tells a good story. I think it changes the emotion of the characters. I don't like this whole Darby Allin give me your title shot thing. That doesn't make any sense. But in terms of that exact spot, I'm okay with it. And I don't think it took that much away from the main event. Number 3, the cage. So they open this match with a hot start, which it should, because it is a blood feud. These 2 people hate one another. So much that they have to be in this match that even AEW wants nothing to do with. Justin Roberts said,
"Ladies and gentlemen, the lights are about to shut off, ending tonight's sanctioned event. Once they come back on, AEW will not be responsible for what takes place."
As these 2 started to beat the hell out of each other, the cage started to descend to a point where they tried to decapitate one another underneath the cage. This is great. I think this was a really good spot. There's a lot of really good things here. Visually, it's very interesting. It makes a lot of sense that these two would go to such an insane length to just try to destroy one another after what they've been through. It gave an opportunity to put the plunder that they were planning to use in the cage. Hangman brought a bag of some sort and threw that in one corner. Prince Nana put a toolbox in another and slid a table in. It made sense that once the cage was in, it was locked, and there was no escape for these two individuals. So this kind of like mad rush to throw everything in the ring. It's like 15 Minutes to Live, if you've ever played that video game, where it's just like, quick, get the supplies. The cage is coming down. Loved all of this. Also, I'm not sure if you noticed this, once they rolled out of the way and didn't get decapitated, that's when the crew came in and started to affix it to the cage, or the cage to the ring, so that it was secure. There was no way that the cage was going to fall any further until the human element came in. So they clearly had done something and rigged it up that the cage would only come down so far until a human element that was at ringside could be like, the competitors are clear, bring it down the rest of the way, and chain it up. This to me was safer than when Seth Rollins almost got impaled. Also, I think it was safer than Austin versus Kane's first blood match. If you don't remember, at the King of the Ring, the main event was not the Hell in the Cell between The Undertaker and Mankind. It was a first blood match between Austin and Kane. A match where they tried to crush them by bringing back down the Hell in the Cell. It was pretty sketch then. And while I won't condemn any of those spots, maybe Seth getting impaled, I think this, out of all three of those, was the safer version. So I think it told a good story, it made sense, it made a logical way to get the plunder into the ring, told a good story, and was pretty safe. Big thumbs up from Scott. Number 4. Number 5? I've lost count. I'm not going to do numbers anymore. The next spot, the staple gun. Now, before I go in depth on my opinion, I listened to a lot of commentary about this particular spot. And it was people like Al Snow and Jim Cornette saying, how do you win a match with a staple gun?
So then Swerve lets him staple him and then takes it away and staples Hangnail. And they're real staples because you can see them. So anyway, again, you can't beat anybody in a fight that way.
Like, you can put a staple into someone's body, but that's not going to keep them down for a 3 count. You would have more luck taking that big metal thing and punching someone in the head with it than to actually use it with its intended purpose. And it really shines a light on a major problem I have with a lot of the commentary about this match. And that is that they keep saying it's a match. It is not. It is an unsanctioned fight. This isn't about winning a sporting contest. The idea is that these two individuals want to destroy one another. No one is going in there trying to pick up a victory. No. Matter of fact, honestly, I don't even think pinfalls should have been involved in this match. I think it should have been knockout or submission. The only reason you should go for a pinfall in this matchup is if you're satisfied. Because you either beat someone until they're unconscious, and then it is unlawful for you to continue your wrath against this person. You beat them until they cannot take it anymore, and they beg for your mercy. Or you've beaten them so badly that you are satisfied with the damage you have provided, and then you go for a pinfall. There's not going to be a schoolboy roll-up in this type of match. So the argument of like, oh, the staple gun, it's not going to win any matches. It's not meant to. It's meant to harm and destroy their opponent by driving metal into their flesh. And the staple gun, does a miserable job accomplishing this story beat. This is 2 big thumbs down for me. This is the worst spot in the match. Hangman Adam Page takes a staple gun and shoots it into Swerve. This hurts a lot. I've actually shot myself with a staple gun during a podcast because I was an idiot and I was playing with a staple gun during a podcast, and I shot myself in the leg. I can tell you, it is a very painful experience. But that is not the message being communicated in this match. Hangman starts stapling Swerve in the chest, and Swerve no-sells it. Because he's a badass and he can take all that pain. But you've never set up the credibility that the staple gun is a devastating item to be used in a fight. And they try to go back on it. Later, Swerve, after no-selling a bunch of staples and pulling them out of his flesh, decides he's going to staple gun pictures of his family and home to Hangman's face. And he punches it in, and Hangman screams in agony. Does this make Swerve look really, really tough? No. It makes Hangman look really, really weak. Because the mainstream audience, I'm not talking about the hardcore deathmatch fans that are familiar with a staple gun. I'm talking about the mainstream wrestling audience that may not have ever seen a staple gun used in professional wrestling before. Their first experience is, oh, I guess it doesn't hurt. Oh, but it hurts Hangman. Oh, Hangman must suck. I know this sounds like I'm overcomplicating things, but I want you to think about it this way. Had they switched the order and had Hangman suffering and bleeding from the mouth and ripping the paper from his flesh, and then in an attempt to get revenge, attacked Swerve, and Swerve didn't sell it, that tells a better story about Swerve being stronger. Think about it this way. Remember how the lead up to Drew McIntyre versus Baron Corbin? Baron Corbin was beating people at the end of days, and they kept bringing up on commentary, nobody's ever kicked out at the end of days. They were adding credibility to his finishing maneuver. We had seen 4 years at this point no one kicking out of the end of days. And then Drew McIntyre gets the shoulder up. It doesn't hurt the move. It doesn't make us think, oh, I guess end of days is a real crappy move. It just makes us go, oh, Drew McIntyre is so hard that he's able to kick out of one of the most devastating finishers we've seen in professional wrestling. Look at that the other way now. Cesaro's swing, or Claudio's swing. We've seen the swing for about a decade, maybe a decade and a half now, and it's a very entertaining move. It always gets the crowd going. We count along, or attempt to. We more just count seconds than revolutions, but we've seen it many, many times, and it's always an impressive move. But then Chris Jericho tapped out of it. This didn't add credibility to the swing. We weren't suddenly like, oh man, swing is such a devastating move. Chris Jericho tapped out. No, your reaction as a fan was, why did Chris Jericho tap out? He swung everybody. He swung people as small as Sami Zayn, as big as the Great Khali. None of them tapped. He swung Seth Rollins 50 times. They never tapped out. That's not how credibility works. They took the time to destroy and dismantle the credibility of the staple gun before then trying to say, oh no, it's really painful later. It's just bad storytelling. So I would have totally cut the staple gun bit. They had already done it in a previous match. That didn't need to exist in this match. 2 thumbs down to the staple guns. Barbed wire through the cage. This is not a good thing for them to have done. Barbed wire is very dangerous and can lead to some great visuals. But you know the major problem with barbed wire is that it's the same color as the cage. And then you wrap it, you put it through the cage, and then you ran Swerve into it, and I couldn't tell if he was hitting barbed wire or not. On top of that, why do you need barbed wire there? You already have the credibility of a cage. We have, as wrestling fans, have been educated for a long time that if you get a running start and throw someone head first into a cage, they bleed. There's no need to add hard to see barbed wire to this spot. I think this was a foolish thing to add to this, especially since I talked about this earlier, that the Willow and Statlander match was so pokey and that this one was so blunt. The addition of just a little bit of barbed wire that's hard to see, very confusing. Had it been a black cage or the classic blue bar cage or, God forbid, a red cage, you could have seen the barbed wire and it could have been a little bit more effective. I just think this was an unnecessary risk. To put barbed wire there and have Swerve ram his face into it didn't add anything for the ref chair spot. This is a very weird moment that I don't understand. The ref suddenly decides that this is getting too violent and tries to take the chair away from Hangman. This gives Swerve a chance to go and hit a drive-by kick and turn the tides on how the way the match was going. Why did the ref suddenly decide this is too far? Knowing how far they were going to go later, knowing how far they had already gone, for him to suddenly be like, no, this chair, that's too much. Granted, you could make the argument that this was building towards the finish. That out of all the things we are seeing, this chair is too much. It's just that it didn't have the credibility at this time for the referee to be like, no, we're going things too far. We can't do that. Also, you have no business doing that. This, I think, could have been accomplished with the ref saying to Hangman, if you do this, if you hit Swerve with that chair, I'm going to end the match. I'm going to call a knockout. And instead, just have Hangman go, I'm not done yet. I got a whole bag of other stuff. See him put it down, and then see him, I don't know, break one of Swerve's fingers or gouge the eye, doing something else. Make it that it's not the ref saying this is too far and you're going too far. Make it the ref saying like, whoa, this will end this match, and make it Hangman's decision to be like, nah, I'm not done yet. I just found this whole spot very confusing. The Cinder Block. Part 1. So, I specifically said that I don't like cinder blocks in professional wrestling. I just have a lot of problems with it. I made a whole video about it. You can see it if you'd want. You can see the 5 weapons I don't want in this match or in wrestling. But the reason I don't like cinder blocks is that I don't like how fake they are when they crumble. Now, Stevie Richards, in his review of this match, mentioned that a cinder block should crumble.
The cinder block being smashed, like over your crotch area, but there's a chair under the cinder block. So you have a layer of, not protection, but you get the smashing of the cinder block, the smoke that comes up from the the cinder block breaking, and the sound of the chair shot all in one.
I personally find that to be very fake because I know that buildings don't fall over all the time that are made of cinder blocks. So there is a matter of taste here. But I will say this. Swerve starts using this cinder block by doing what I consider to be the smartest thing. He picks it up and he drops it. And you hear that loud thunk. He is adding credibility to that weapon. This isn't a paper mache cinder block. This is a real Cinder Block. And the fact that Swerve took the time to pick it up and drop it and add that credibility to that Cinder Block, mwah, chef's kiss. Great move. Because what you're about to do with that Cinder Block is a terrible thing to do to a human body. So you want to make sure that that crowd knows what's about to go down. So I love that he took the time to do that. I hate that JR and Taz are making quips during this.
I got hit in the face with a cinder block one time. It's no fun, I promise you.
I got hit in the nuts with one. True story.
Thanks for informing us, Taz.
He just took a deadly weapon out. He took a brick out of a box and dropped it with a thud. You know something horrible's about to happen. Now's not the time for quips. I'm a big quip guy. I love doing quips on commentary. It's fun time. But you gotta know when it's appropriate. And right before a potential murder, not the time. Add credibility to what's about to happen. It shouldn't be, oh, I got hit in the head with a cinder block before. It should be, oh God, what is Swerve got in mind? Hangman's got to get out of there. He's in a cage. He's got nowhere to go. That's where we should be in that moment. Also, the whole feud has been kindled by the house burning down. I think it's smart to have house-based weapons. Like, I think this makes a lot of sense. There's some good theming. I really like it. But I will say this. In my 5 weapons that wrestlers need to stop using, I say stop hitting each other with cinder blocks. If you want to use it as a platform and slam people on it, I understand that. It's not super safe, but I understand the spot. It is logical. You can do it in a controlled way, but it's always going to be dangerous. I meant like have a bunch of them. I didn't want you to have just one. That's not enough space. That's not enough surface area. It's like making a bed of nails with one nail in it. No, that's just a board with a nail in it. That's not a platform. The way that they hit this vertebraker is terrifying, and it gets a nasty scrape on Hangman's back. This is not the type of move I would justify doing on a cinder block, but I think it was done as safely as you could possibly do it. So, I actually have to give this a thumbs up. These are 2 professional athletes that are making decisions with their body. And while it will never be completely safe to do the thing they did with that cinder block, they made those choices with their body, and they did it, in my opinion, as safely as they could, considering the circumstances. The table! I adore this. I think this is great. I think everybody wants tables. Like, tables are the pinnacle of pro wrestling weapons. People exploding through tables is absolutely fantastic. I mean, even John Oliver said it on his show. We love seeing people explode through tables. I think this is a great moment to do the table spot, because what you just did to Hangman was horrendous. You just hit a vertebraker on a cinder block. He needs time to recover. You can justify it by having to take the time to set up a table. I thought the pacing was right. This is a great moment to give recovery time to Hangman, to give production time to show replays, to be able to tell the story on commentary and set up the next spot, which is the double stomp through the table, which I think was gorgeous. This would be a perfect spot. There's just one tiny problem here, and that's the chants from the crowd. And this is not me dissing the crowd in Chicago. I think they actually have a good point. This is when they start chanting, "We want fire." And people have always complained that the bloodthirsty fans calling for a shot breaks the storytelling. I hate it when the crowd starts chanting, "We want tables," randomly in a hardcore match, because you know what? They got it planned. They know what the match is. Just because you're asking for tables doesn't mean they're going to be like, "Oh, you know, it was supposed to end with a victory roll, but let's do a power bomb through the table." That's never going to happen. That being said, fire was a main component to this feud. I was positive I was going to get fire in this match. Not that I think there should be. I think fire is very dangerous and it can't be controlled. But you definitely informed the audience that this match is about a fire. So why wouldn't there be fire? It's confusing to me that the gas can was such a thing with Darby and with Jungle Boy, the scapegoat. I'm always going to call him Jungle Boy. And that it didn't come up at all in this match after fire was like the last remaining image. The fire was Hangman's entire Titantron. Fire was the gear that Swerve was wearing. You had informed the audience that there was going to be fire, and you really didn't deliver in that point. I feel a little gross having seen that match and going, yeah, this should have been fire. But I definitely feel like that was something that was informed to the crowd, that it was a storytelling beat, and I thought it was a little strange that it didn't show up. That being said, the explosion through the table, top notch. The Splinter. Not that one. It's a weapon. The Splinter. I really liked the Splinter. The idea that Hangman took a piece of the house he burned down and was going to use it to jam into the forehead of Swerve, I love. I think it's great. It is not silver, so you can see it. And Swerve has this connection to it. It should hurt emotionally, along with it being physically painful. And while Hangman does do this great thing, where right before he pulls it out, he says, whose house? Swerve's house. Trying to inform the audience that this is part of Swerve's house. Commentary does a great job of explaining that. The crowd in attendance apparently didn't know it was a Splinter, and a lot just thought it was just a knife. Like, if you go back and you watch that, and there's a lot of, like, swinging and, like, close to stabbing, they thought they were just trying to stab each other with a knife, which I think is unfortunate for the crowd there, but great for us at home. Because with every attempted stab and block, the crowd audibly gasped. And that added a lot of credibility to the at-home experience. So I guess I could criticize them for not making it clear enough to the fans in attendance that what was being used was a Splinter. But I think the fact that they actually thought it was a knife added to the experience overall for me. And I like me a lot. So, yes, you could have told the story a little bit clearer for the fans in attendance, but looking through the mesh and trying to see a Splinter, very difficult. Overall, I think what they did with it, pretty good. I think every attack, they held their hands in a way that they could control the item that they were working with and handled it in a very safe way. It is pokey versus blunt, which is a point that I've already made once, but I think that the Splinter tells a great story, and while we didn't get fire, getting the burned remains of the house, that's got to be 2 thumbs up. Cinder Block, Part 2. This is awful. The power bomb onto a single Cinder Block is one of the most disgusting bumps I've ever seen in my life. This I can never justify. Had you at least had a nice palette of cinder blocks, it wouldn't have felt good, but you could at least land that flat and take a safe type bump onto the cinder blocks rather than having your back bend like Homer Simpson hitting the fire hydrant. On top of that, I can't think of a more dangerous move to do onto the cinder block than the power bomb. Action figure time. So we got Havoc here, and we got Usagi Yojimbo. And Havoc's going to hit a power bomb. And he picks him up, and you can see the way that you pick someone up for a power bomb, they end up in this position. From this position, Havoc cannot see. So, even if there was a super safe way to deliver this power bomb onto a cinder block, how would it be accomplished in this position if you can't see? This is, in my opinion, proven later in the match. Because later in the match, after Swerve is broken in half on the cinder block, Swerve gets the upper hand, and he goes for a power bomb. And it looks like it's going to go to the cinder block, and then he suddenly turns, and he throws him into the cage. And Tony Schiavone actually says, "Oh, into the cage! That's probably not as bad as the cinder block." Which, why would you say that? Why would you be like, we wanted to see him get bent in half over the cinder block? It's a weird call. Like, that could have ended the match. I mean, we know it wouldn't, but in the reality of the match, that should be sold like another potential match-ending move. But instead, Tony Schiavone was like, not as bad as what we've just seen. And Excalibur actually says, I think he was looking for the cinder block, but couldn't see it. Which I believe. I honestly believe there was supposed to be a third cinder block spot in this match. I think there was supposed to be a retribution power bomb onto that cinder block with Swerve delivering it to Hangman Page. But Swerve realized he couldn't do it safely because he couldn't see because Hangman's in the way. This was unnecessary. We had already seen a cinder block spot. We did not need to see another. And I hope we never see anything like that one again. That's why it's on the list of weapons you can't use. The needle. This might be the most controversial thing in this video. Because honestly, my thought on this needle is the syringe was a failed spot. And I'm not saying it wasn't right to do or that it was unsafe or that it has no part in wrestling. No, I think they failed to accomplish the spot. Because I've seen this spot before. I saw this spot back in 2009 because this is part of Tournament of Death 8. CZW did this in Tournament of Death 8 and it was done by Thumbtack Jack. Thumbtack Jack's signature was, of course, syringes. It's right there in the name. And what I want you to do right now, take your finger, and I want you to put it in your mouth, and just feel the inside of your cheek. Right there. Uh-huh. Oh, you feel that? It's pretty soft, right? What Thumbtack Jack did was he took a needle or a syringe, and he put it through his opponent's cheek to the point that the needle stuck out on the other side. And then he hit the plunger and water shot out. And it's a very gross, disgusting visual. Even just describing it right now makes this part of my jaw hurts like I just had a warhead. But I think that's the spot they were attempting to do. And the fact that they did not accomplish that simple act of making it poke out the other side, makes this a completely failed spot. Because the purpose of that spot is to do something gross and painful to your opponent. But a mainstream audience has never seen syringes in a wrestling match. But we've seen syringes in life. So when we see the syringe, our thought is, what's in it? My thought, or many others' thoughts, was, oh, he's trying to poison him. There's a lot of discussion of like, was he trying to poison Swerve? Was he trying to knock Swerve out with some sort of like numbing agent or like chloroform? Like, is this the evolution of the ether rag of knocking someone out? Honestly, don't think that's what they were going for. I think they were trying to make it go through the cheek. And everything about this was confusing. Why did he take Swerve's grill out first? It wasn't in the way. He just ripped it out of his mouth, and then like he didn't step on it, he didn't destroy it. It's just like, I'm gonna put this over here for later. All right, there we go. It's not in the way of its cheek or anything. I don't know why he didn't stab him in the gums. So right away, you're sending confusing information to your crowd who has never seen something like this happen before. And then it was a failure of getting it into the correct position to finish the spot. This is a failed spot. The chair to the head. We know so much more about the brain, concussions, and CTE, and that is why chairs to the head are a relic of the past, and that is where they belong. There was a vicious chair to the head at the end of this match. Now first, I do want to bring up he had a needle in his mouth, which made me think that was supposed to add to this. Like he's always also hitting the needle, but I don't know if that's the case. Again, I think that was a failed spot. But the reaction to this is one of outrage. A lot of people feel like this was too far. And there's been a lot of reports about the chair. It is a steel chair to the head. You can't do that safely. And people then responded, well, it's a shaved down chair. People were like, well, it's still a steel chair. What is shaving it down going to do? So I bring this to you. The idea of getting hit really hard with velocity in the head with steel is terrifying and something that should never be done. But if you watch that spot back, the camera oddly cuts like 3 times. And when you see that chair, it is horribly dented. And we've seen Hangman use that chair throughout the match, telling Swerve to beg and then hitting him with the corner of the chair. There's 2 chairs in this match, but with this chair, he's only hitting him with the corner until that final shot. So what if it was a shaved down chair? It's still metal, you might say. Well, what if it was the consistency of, say, one of these? This is just a tin foil, hand foil tray. It's metal. Solid metal. You can swing it real hard. You can put a lot of velocity behind it. But if I were to get hit in the head with this, leaves a nice dent. Doesn't really hurt though. Also, you can see that the chair gives in a certain way. Like the hinges kind of break. I think if you took something about this consistency, and on top of that, imagine a toilet seat. Stay with me. I'm going to hit you in the head with a toilet seat. All right? And the way I'm going to hit you is the part you sit on, the open part, is going to go end up around your neck, and the lid will then hit you. It's got hinges, so it will open up. So if I were to like put my thumbs over the part that open, the moment I swing and it makes contact, it will give and open while also creating the motion that I'm still implying pressure because that part of the toilet seat will wrap around your head and the rest will open. And if the lid is made of this, I think that's pretty safe. Now, am I saying that's 100% how they did the chair shot? No. What I'm saying is, if I was a billionaire and I had a lot of access to goods and materials and crafting, that's how I would do it. And the response to the chair shot is the one I think they wanted. They wanted people to look at this and say, oh, that's disgusting. It's a chair to the head. How awful. And the fact that that credibility for a chair shot to the head exists within the fan base, that every fan there would shudder with fear because they know how horrible that is. If you can do that, and safely, that's a great way to end a match. It truly is a great finish. It is something that people will be talking about for a long time. I think if they did it the way I described, well done, AEW. Thanks for giving us this talking point. The match as a whole. So, overall, I think this match did a little too much. I don't think you needed a second Cinder Block spot. I don't think you needed the staple gun. But I also understand they had to top the Texas Death Match. The Texas Death Match, which I also did a whole video on, had broken glass and had Hangman getting hung with chains. That's a hard bar to clear. And I think they successfully did it. They successfully told the story of two men that had lost themselves because they were so bent on destroying one another. They told the story of Hangman doing anything to destroy Swerve, while Swerve, at times, was happy for this to be over, until Hangman once again reminded him of the horrors that he's put Swerve through and would snap Swerve into another mode. This told the story very well. Except, Hangman went for a cover 3 times and Swerve kicked out of it. Hangman hit 2 dead eyes and tried to get a cover off of that. The end of this match was Swerve on his knees while Hangman said, I said I was gonna make you beg. Now you're gonna beg for me. I'm gonna make you beg. Clang! I'm gonna make you beg. Clang! This is the moment he promised. The moment that he had been waiting for. All those times sitting at home suspended. And he almost took it away from himself because he went for a cover. None of this could have happened if Swerve had just not been able to kick out. This match should have featured 0 near falls. Because this match should have only ended when someone was knocked out, someone gave up, or you were satisfied enough to go for a pin. And they really messed that up, in my opinion, with those near falls. So now that this is over, there's a lot of discussion about AEW as a whole and whether or not this match should have taken place, if it turned fans off, if it made new fans. What did this fan reaction really accomplish for AEW? I do think it was a bit of a weird decision to do this while Tony Khan is trying to get a TV deal. Because for 2 weeks now, AEW has been in the spotlight, but not for the reasons you want. A lot of people have been saying, like, this is too violent, this is horrible, this shouldn't be done, and those are not the words you want surrounding your company when you're asking for a lot of money to make TV shows. That being said, the number one thing I keep hearing is, if you don't like it, don't watch it. And oddly, I agree with that statement, but not the way you think. You see, this brings me back to the main point that all these pundits seem to keep missing. This match was unsanctioned. And that's not me saying, like, you should understand it's gonna be bloody. That's what we promised, it was unsanctioned. I think people have lost what that stipulation is supposed to mean. This all goes back to what Justin Roberts says before the match starts. The lights will go out, and that will bring an end to tonight's show. This match is unsanctioned. The message there is what you are about to see isn't AEW. This is something more. Now, we are smart enough to know that, this is an AEW match. AEW is putting this on. They're getting paid by AEW. We know that. But this is an indie wrestling trick. Basically, if you want to do a match like this on the indies, you want to do a big, bloody brawl. Make it an unsanctioned match. This way, you can still have the families come. You can still bring your kid to our show. But then your kid will see us go, the show's over. You're not missing anything anymore. The show's over. And you can take your kid out. And if you don't want to see it, don't watch it. And then everyone that wants to see it stays. That is the point of an unsanctioned match. It's not the storyline of we won't be held responsible for what happens inside these ropes. Sure, that's part of it. But it's also to tell the audience, this is going to be too much for a lot of people. Tune out. It's fine. It's unsanctioned. There's not gonna really be any repercussions in terms of who's gonna be champion or anything like that, because it's unsanctioned. It doesn't count. I think back to one of my favorite unsanctioned matches that was happening when I was working back in Chakara. There was an unsanctioned chain match between Volgar and Juke Joint Lucas Calhoun. Now, Chakara was a very family-friendly company, so the idea of Chakara doing an unsanctioned match was a bit confusing. So it was done at intermission. And if memory serves, there was another activity you could do during this match. And we went out of our way to explain that this match is not a Chakara match. There was no commentary on this match. All the Chakara labels came down. This way they were not visible. And there wasn't a referee. Because why would there be a Chakara referee in an unsanctioned match? I honestly think this match would have been much better without a referee in it. I think it would really have told a very scary story of two men locked in a cage, fighting until one of them decides that's enough. The idea of these two men doing horrible things to one another, and not only can the opponent not escape, but even if things got too far in someone's opinion, they can't even get into the ring to stop what's happening. This was an unsanctioned match. It wasn't about wins and losses. So why was the referee even there at all? I think that was the missing component from that. If you took the referee out of the cage, and after that chair shot, Hangman just walked out, said he was done, I think that would have been a stronger image. It would have made Hangman look very strong. And of course, this is important to keep in mind because it's unsanctioned. Swerve's still undefeated against Hangman. Does that mean they're going to run it back? God, I hope not. They don't need to fight anymore. But that is my overanalysis of the unsanctioned cage match between Swerve and Hangman. What did you think of the match? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm actively trying to respond to as many comments as possible, and you just listened to me talk for a really long time, so by all means, make this a conversation. Let me hear your thoughts, and I'll let you know what I think of your thoughts as well. And while you're down there, you can hit subscribe. Also, check out the channel. I finally made playlists, so if you want to view via category, you can do that as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you have a great day.